Hello, hello, what is up, what is good? This is Keatsta, the internet's laziest anime nerd, back at it with a list that is almost 3 months too late. I even thought about skipping this because we talked about all of these shows at much greater length in each of the seasonal anime review videos. So it feels a little redundant. At the same time, though, this was just such an amazing year for anime, as you'll see in the subsequent minutes. So many of these shows could have easily been number one in another year, and I wanted to acknowledge that somehow, celebrate that somehow. Even if, as I point out, my fervor and enthusiasm for making videos about anime is in a slump right now. And honestly, I'm not even watching much anime right now. I'm behind on everything in this season. And there's several other shows that I think would probably have made this list had I watched them and finished them last year. So I don't know if I'm really in the right position to have this duty of declaring the top 10 anime of 2024 when, I am so ignorant and I am so slow to move. But screw it, I'm going to. And we're going to try to keep things light and breezy this time. Aiming for a sub 1 hour completion. As I said, I've already talked about these shows in length in other videos, so if you're curious, feel free, track those down, watch those reviews. Here I'm just gonna gotta give you the highlights, and I think if this video has one goal, it's to help people who don't typically watch anime, that want to pick something up, that are kind of curious what the scene is like, to see which of these shows might suit them best. All right, first, we're going to talk about this one. This is Jellyfish Can't Swim at Night. A show that I really think, on paper, had it been described to me, I would have assumed that I would have liked even more than I did. So many elements are right up my alley. This idea of four people coming together: a singer, a composer, a visual artist, and a VTuber video producer type to create this gigantic multimedia project. Just the aiming for artistic fulfillment as kind of the main passion and through line of the entire series. The way that it depicts Shibuya at night, this feeling of a sea of nightlife, such great characters, such great animation, even really great trans representation. One character's plotline I found myself very moved by. I thought it was very authentic, very interesting. But man, the plot gets really stupid. If you want to talk about forced drama, if you want to talk about things happening just so that there's conflict in the plot that really do not seem founded by the characters' established motivations or personality, if you want to talk about Yuri baiting, if you want to talk about setting up so many potential emotional payoffs and then kind of wimping out of over half of them, if you want to talk about that, go watch my full review of this series where I will talk at you about that at some length. Very disappointing. It seems like they had so many great ingredients and then kind of just stumbled over themselves trying to fit it all into a much more conventional plot than this could have required. Because, this is anime, right? There's so many anime that are just raw wish fulfillment that don't really have conflict per se. This is something that anime prides itself in, that is kind of like a foundational and revolutionary aspect of the medium. You go back to Miyazaki making My Neighbor Totoro, and he was like, I want to make a movie without a villain. I want to make a movie that's not just about conflict and battle and this versus that, winners and losers. And I think anime has inherited that spirit across so many different genres. So many shows are about just having a good time. Why can't we just have a fun time with this one too? But oh well, it's still very solid. As I said, all of the ingredients are here and they're great. It's just very compromised by itself, by its need to be more than it needed to be, and the awkwardness of shoving in uh, just very frustrating plot elements at times. Okay. Next, we have this intriguing looking show. This is Train to the End of the World. And here's another very cool show that is also about exploring a far out scene and has all of the right ingredients of great animation, great characters, all that good stuff. But here, instead of the nightlife of Shibuya and these sort of upstart artists, we have a wacky post the something lips journeying from station to station on this train, each station beset by bizarre misfortune, and our main cast sometimes resolving it, sometimes just getting the hell out of there. The drama I found is just very emotionally grounded in this series. They do a great job having the characters have interpersonal drama that actually feels reflective of their characters and doesn't feel forced in, but rather is just kind of the foundation for the way the characters interact with each other, for their motivations in trying to find their friend, hearing why, they became alienated from their friend, why their friend left in the first place, why they're so compelled to track her down. All of this felt very real. All of this felt very grounded and straightforward to me. There wasn't any kind of unnecessary twists to just kind of force a conflict. But then from there, it just builds up into kind of total nonsense, surrealist, dreamlike phantasmagoria brilliance. I think probably the thing that encapsulates this feeling best, and this is like a minor spoiler, I guess, is that the big villain doesn't have like grand schemes, isn't kind of elder god tier motivated by something that's compelling and sensible to the viewer. In fact, it's even more relatable than that. It's relatable on like an embarrassing level, where basically he caused this like horrible situation. He activated 7G and warped the entirety of Japan into this surrealist nightmare world, and he just doesn't want to be in trouble for it. And everything he's doing now is just running away from people and trying to get away with Windows wants to restart to install the latest Windows update. We're gonna snooze you. And I just found that so refreshing, so funny. Like, they just knew when to kind of take the foot off the gas, proverbially, and let things just kind of coast on their simplest dynamics, having built up this good foundation, having built up this great premise and setting. It's sort of Rolling Girls-esque. I wouldn't put it on the same tier as Rolling Girls. Rolling Girls is a masterpiece. But it has a lot of the same feelings, a lot of the same kind of like setting and dynamic, and then the same feeling of like underneath it all is just really solid character dynamics where you really care about these people. You really want to see them resolve their interpersonal issues, and that everything is kind of just a manifest from that. Alright, next we are going to talk about one of the big hits of the year. This is the Apothecary Diaries, Season 2 airing now. I have watched none of it because I'm the internet's laziest animator, but I gotta get to it. It seems like it'll be really good. This is a series that I would not have ever touched were it not for Anime Club. I was like vaguely interested because the manga is very acclaimed, the production looked great, but the genre is just so far outside of my typical wheelhouse. It's like period piece, romantasy. Have you heard of this genre? It is the most popular genre in all of literature right now. Romantasy, court love, court affairs, that sort of stuff I just cannot get into. I find it all very kind of frustrating and bullshit. When you set your entire world within something that is just so blatantly like unfair and a horrible time for the rights of 99.9% of people involved, and then you kind of portray any aspect of it as idyllic or lovely or something to aspire to. You have these wonderful quote-unquote romances playing out in those sorts of settings. I find it all very frustrating. I have the same problem like reading Jane Austen. It's not even like contemporary things looking back at that sort of stuff. It's stuff that was contemporaneous with those problematic times, romanticizing it in the moment. Lady, shut the hell up. You got like 80 servants. I don't care about any of your problems. Anyways, so this I kind of lumped into that category. And yeah, it sort of tries to position itself as a genre subversion in a lot of ways, especially in our main character, Mao Mao. She is very much like a 180 of any other protagonist and any other genre in this sort of setting. But, you know, in the end, the negative of something still looks an awful lot like that thing. And if all you're kind of doing is beat by beat subverting tropes, you're still kind of hitting all the same tropes at the same time. But really, what I realized is as much as it has the trappings of this genre that I am not interested in, as much as it has the setting and character archetypes and kind of general plot points, really though, what's happening on an episode by episode basis is House, the great television franchise House MD that I watched all the time as a kid. That I still feel very fondly towards. I don't think it's like an amazing show or anything, but there's a lot to love about it. And everything I loved about House is in the Apothecary Diaries. Fun mysteries with just enough medicinal X factor. And I love Mao Mao as a character. She really is just kind of like House. And all the other wacky friends started growing on me as well. Again, I thought at first that they just sort of slotted into these archetypes, and they do. But I think just the focus of the show and the way these mysteries unfold, just that kind of comfiness that I get from these small scale episodic medicinal mysteries, made everything so endearing to me. And although, you know, I again feel frustrated in these genres when they idealize objectively horrible conditions from actual history. And I wish that they had some sort of sense of revolutionary energy, that it becomes a story about wanting to change the system and not just going along with the system. It doesn't have a whole lot of that, but it does have some critique. It does acknowledge the shittiness of the situation for many different people involved. It empathizes with people in lots of different roles and talks about how little agency they have, how few rights they have. So I was impressed with that. I'll give it that much, and it kind of felt like maybe at some point there will be a plot about change. Whereas right now, it really is Mao Mao preserving the status quo by rooting out all of these misdemeanors and wrongdoers. Yeah, I gotta start watching season 2. Very curious what will happen. Alright, next we're gonna talk about this dude with his dogs out on the table. This is Undead Unluck. This is one of my favorite battle shonen of the current or extremely recent, it ended about a month ago, era of Weekly Shonen Jump. It's a very strange, very postmodern, very abstract sort of battle shonen that, again, while kind of conforming to all of these genre trappings and genre structures, does so in an extremely subversive, extremely almost nightmarish, bizarre way. You know, involving a man who cannot die and fights by severing his own limbs and blasting off from his blood pressure, and all sorts of bizarreness on top of that. Although ultimately resolving in the wonderful battle shonen feelings of camaraderie and empowerment and revolutionary change. And then this is taken by the Shaft legend Yuki Yase, director of some of my favorite anime of all time. Anime in a very, very different genre than this, but basically taking that sort of Shaft sensibility, very experimental, very expressionist, very diegetically abstract, and telling a battle shonen story with those filmic language. Crazy. And although I loved it the whole way through, all of Undead Unluck, looking back at it, I think some of the opening arcs of the series, in some ways at least, were still the high watermark for me. They were able to achieve something very, very unique of pretty much any manga I've read in Weekly Shonen Jump or just battle shonen manga in general, where this like insane potential, this feeling of just like anything could happen, a huge amount of openness, where they had laid down so many potential paths for the storyline, sometimes very explicitly, like in the arc where they find out that a manga that exists in the world of the series is actually like an abstract prophecy for real events that they need to interpret as pertaining to the real world and not like the silly rom-com that the manga itself is about. And then they like tease future arcs of Undead Unluck by just talking about arcs of this other manga that weren't published. They're like tracking down the editor to see what ideas were rejected that might still be prophetic. And it's just like this crazy feeling of potential, because in so many ways, like that's the most explicit example, but all these times they're setting up things that could happen. Are we going to battle all of the seasons? Are we going to battle the fundamental rules that dictate how life works? Is this going to end with Andy dying? Like, is that really what it's all about? Are Andy and Fuko going to get together? Is that what it's really all about? Like, it just was so open. So many paths went before it, and it felt like it could really go on such an insanely demented, bizarre level, just because it felt like there was no restraint. Everything was on the table at once. Everything had come to the great round table of the Union. Yeah, really great stuff. Read the manga, watch the anime. I think they're going to continue adapting this. I think there's going to be like a movie or an OVA or something, and then maybe an entire other 2-course season. And that could be enough to get us quite a ways through the story, at least. Yeah, I hope this gets a full adaptation at some point. I think it is really great the whole way through. Even though, I don't know, you could watch my manga videos to hear me complain about the ending. It is what it is. Alright, next we got Dan Da Dan. We all know it. We all love it. One of the biggest hits of the year. I love Science Saru production. I love the manga. I've come to really love Creepy Nuts. You know, I had heard the Mashal OP and I was like, yeah, this is catchy. This is fun. But this one was the one that really moved me, and then checking out more and more of their music, just more and more impressed. And yet, with all of that, this still feels more powerful than the sum of its parts. They created anime here that manages to balance both being mind-blowing in the big moments and just like quietly perfect in the small moments. And quietly doesn't seem like the word to use. But I just mean that every scene, every interaction, every character moment, every beat has like a little special something mixed into it, a special amount of effort put into even the most minute details of the show, such that even if you're not an anime nerd like me, even if you're not like a student of animation, you're going to subtly have this feeling of just everything being so excellent, of there never being a point at which you can see the slump and see the drag. So not only am I impressed as a big anime fan, I feel like this represents a real pathway for others to become big anime fans. Because it starts to like grow an appreciation for just the quality of anime outside of big Sakuga spectacle scenes, outside of really experimental scenes, you know, the stuff that really commands your attention. I think this is one of the best representations of a show that's just good in a wide variety of ways all the time, such that no matter how fine-grained you tune the microscope, you're still like, ooh, that's a good choice on that scene. Sort of potentially otakufying shows come along pretty infrequently. I would say typically we remain, even when there's like a big crossover hit that both the anime diehards and the anime novices both love, there's very rarely a sense of that, like, okay, we're gonna pull you over to the other side now. you're gonna start craving the same things we are. You're gonna start watching all the same shows as us. I think the last time I had a sense of that happening was probably Mob Psycho. And that's probably for the best. we don't need more people becoming otaku. There's way too many as is. I was in freaking GameStop a couple days ago with my boyfriend, and I was just looking at the fact that they have like a wall of figures and a wall of manga, and it's like mostly figures from shows that I like and manga that I like. You know, not crazy niche things, not stuff that it's like shocking that it would be there. But I did have a moment of like clarity where I took a step back, and it's like, it is shocking that like any of this is here. That there is this much representation of anime and manga in like every single store you go into. And I said, man, sometimes it really hits me. Like, I just won. I achieved cultural dominance. I watched this shit grow from one teeny tiny little shelf in chapters when I was a kid to taking over the majority of a lot of pop culture stories. It's like, damn, I really won. But we don't need to go much further. I don't need to take victory laps. This is enough. This is enough anime manga saturation. Okay. Next, we are going to talk about Yuru Camp, season 3 of one of my most beloved slice of life shows of all time. Kind of shocking that it's like only at number 3. That just goes to show you how insanely strong the competition this year is. Season 1 and 2 of Yuru Camp. Season 2, I know I did a top 10 list of that year. Season 1, I'm not so sure, but I'm like pretty sure it would have been number 1 in that year, unless I'm forgetting something major. Yeah, the top 5 is just a freaking den of beasts. And you know, I wouldn't say this is the strongest season of Yuru Camp. In fact, I would say it's the weakest season of Yuru Camp. It's a lot more like goofy. It isn't so focused on just like the relaxing, the healing aspect that makes it so special. But still, like, even if they are only on second gear on those fronts and aiming more for the comedy or whatever, this is still one of the most healing, fulfilling, peaceful, beautiful shows around. Truly a wonderful, wonderful experience no matter what. And where it got goofy, it was very funny. This is definitely the funniest season of Yuru Camp yet. The one that cracks me up, just even conceptually, is when they're telling Nadeshiko-chan about their camping trip, and to like spice things up, they tell all of the anecdotes as if this famous dog from YouTube was also there, and Nadeshiko-chan just keeps asking what that dog was doing, what the dog doing, and they have to keep like inserting him into the anecdotes, and they like forget about him sometimes, and then they're like, oh, and he was also there, and he ran over and drank from the stream and was playing around in it, and it was so cute. And then just like this idea that they should like spice up their own stories. I don't know. It started kind of encroaching into the genre territory. In my latest anime review video, I talked about Noble Farmer, which is a lovely short series. And it really aims for this sort of like manic variety show energy where it's just this barrage of jokes and anecdotes and banter. Yuru Camp, I think, is adopting more and more of that style, like especially in that segment, but then just kind of the comedy throughout the series, or throughout the season. It felt like there was a lot of this sort of like banter and commentating on, a focus on like sharing memories with each other and then just sort of riffing on them. It's a lot of fun. It's really a lot of fun, and it's very interesting to see the series kind of branch out into different genre spaces. I suppose you can only write characters sitting serenely at the foot of a mountain, contemplating the lovely weather. You can only do that so many times. you gotta start mixing it up a bit. All right, next we have this intriguing scene. What is going on here? This, of course, is the latest from the Monogatari series, the Off and Monster season. Once again, pretty amazing that this is only at 4th. This is another very long-running series, you know, having semi-frequent releases all the way back since 2007. This, I think, is the longest gap. But in almost any year where a major Monogatari project came out, I would bet that it was, if not number 1, at least in the top 3. I don't know. Maybe at some point I should make a video that's just like doing all of the historic years that I missed between when I started watching a lot of seasonal anime and when I started making these videos. Whatever. Anyways, yeah. It's only 4th this year, which is nuts. Because this is like good stuff. And in terms of like the sheer joy I had watching it and realizing, oh my god, this is actually happening, after I had abandoned all hope of it continuing, because, you know, the spot where they had left off on in, like, 2018 or whatever, Zoku Owari, that's a fine ending place. That feels like the end of the entire saga that had started at the beginning of second series. And then, of course, all of the internal Shaft drama, a lot of people leaving the company. I thought that was it. I thought we were in a situation of my grandpa shook his head and said, "We don't know how to make that anime anymore." So the excitement and the giddiness I have, like, wow, they're actually making more Monogatari. I'm actually getting to watch this. Even then, the three shows above this, I might have felt even more that feeling of, oh my god, it actually exists. But everything I loved about the series is back in a way that, yeah, I actually put this joke in the slide. Like, it really is so much that outside of Pretty Boy Detective Club, which felt like a weird flash in the pan anomaly, nobody had made anything on the level of the Monogatari series since the Monogatari series finished. Shows that were superficially similar, like Bunny Girl Senpai or Shoshimin series, that kind of adopted either uh, kind of like the messaging and structure of the series, or yeah, the sort of philosophical tone, or aped the stylistic conventions of it or whatever, only proved how huge a gap there was, only proved how far away we were from creating something like this. I don't know why I just love this meme so much of what is the original? It's talking about like constructing some buildings or something. We don't know how to do that anymore. We literally can't. We forgot how to make something like that. But no, we're redeemed this time. We can still do it. And you know, like, I'm not gonna convince anybody to watch it here. I said, oh, I hope this video gets people curious about these shows, blah blah blah. I hope people that aren't like super into anime watch this top 10 list and seriously contemplate checking out some of these shows. No, 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 no. You're not gonna watch this one. It's the final boss of anime. I think that's very true. It's like a 13-part series at this point. It's dozens and dozens of hours of content. And it's all the nasty things you've heard about the medium in general. All of the perversions, all of the morally decrepit ideas. Um, I can't sit here and try to argue to somebody on the outside of what's really going on in Monogatari. I'm going to sound deranged. I'm not going to convince anyone in any way. I think this was meant to be LOL, but we just got as far as L because I'm taking the L. I don't know. It is what it is. Watch my seasonal anime review video on this. I'll explain the real heart of the Monogatari series to you, but only if you want to know. If you're content to just be like, well, that's a pervert show for perverts, you're not wrong. And that's fine. It's not for everybody. Okay, next we have at number 3 the remake of Ranma. One of the most landmark media experiences of my entire life, I am sure, was reading Ranma for the first time. I was, I think, 11 or 12. I had just started getting into manga. My mom had bought me the Western Shonen Jump, which itself was already an extremely eye-opening, mind-blowing experience. But that was kind of like, well, I'd already been watching Dragon Ball on TV. That's why she bought it, as Goku was on the cover. I already had a sense of, like, what was happening in Battle Shonen now, because that's what was on YTV. That's what was getting adapted. But reading Ranma, a series from, like, the 80s, a series that truly predated me, and realizing, like, what a treasure trove there was in manga, completely mind-blowing, completely eye-opening. It was the first thing that really gave me a hunger, not just to read the stuff that was before me, but to seek out everything that I could. And of course, it's also a series about a guy that can turn into a girl. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. So they made it into an anime already back in the 80s, contemporaneously. And now they've remade it into an extremely modern celebration of anime both new and old. I truly think this succeeds in blending both the very modern kind of Sakuga style of anime, stuff that's really achievable only in kind of the digital era, with the incredibly talented pool of animators working in this style today, but then bringing in a lot of the real classics, especially in kind of the more comedy segments. Amazing, amazing. This is debatably the magnum opus of Rumiko Takahashi, who is indisputably the goddess of manga. Somebody who's up on the great celestial throne with very few others. Tezuka, of course, but I can't honestly think of a third that ought to go on that tier. It's a gender slash species bending goofy martial arts rom-com slash some comfy sitcom, all predicated around kind of an asshole of the week type thing where somebody barges in and needs to get their ass beat. It's so fundamental that if you were kind of told about this and you were told that this was a classic of the medium, you're probably picturing something very accurate without even seeing it. It's just the sort of thing that you feel like ought to exist. That if anime and manga as a medium have been built up so much in so many different genres, then there needs to be some sort of example, some sort of true fundamental. In the same way that Romeo and Juliet has to exist. That if you see so many Romeo and Juliet likes across so many mediums and so many decades, you would conceive realistically and accurately that there must be some definitive example like this. And it's so perfectly constructed, so immaculate, so well put together, so funny, so action-packed, so dramatic, so fun. It feels like she had to write it. It feels like the series had to exist. That if nobody had made Ranma, it would be forced into existence. Yeah, this is the one I want you to watch. I don't care if you don't watch Monogatari. Nobody has to watch Monogatari. You can watch Ranma. Please watch Ranma. Or watch this! Yay! At number 2, we have Dungeon Meshi. Because, even if Ranma was, like, probably the foundational experience of my manga reading youth, the thing that really kicked down the door and made me start voraciously reading anything I could get my hands on, I'm still reading manga. It worked. And I'm still having big experiences. I'm not, in the pits of nostalgia where nothing can measure up to those eye-opening moments in my youth. I think there's manga I'm reading today that's better than anything that's come before it, and this is one of them. This might be my favorite manga of the 2010s. It's such a wonderfully rich and food-oriented fantasy, overflowing with character, and most importantly, and what makes the series so interesting to me and so special to me, is that it truly envisions an entire fantasy society that emerges from the rules and the setting and the characters that they've established. And if you watch the seasonal anime review, I rambled on about this at some length. But it really makes a difference, I think. And again, it's a subtle thing, but it's like watching The Wire. And you're like, damn, every piece of this makes sense. Every piece of this fits together. There's no scale on which things break or warp or feel arbitrary. And The Wire, they just looked at real Baltimore. Anybody can look at reality. Ryoko Sensei, she put together this entire world by herself. Sweet Generous, it doesn't exist, and yet she was able to imagine it with such rich societal detail. Amazing, amazing. Animated by one of my favorite studios, Trigger, operating in rare form. A lot of Trigger shows are very, very extreme in a lot of ways. You look at Kill la Kill or Inferno Cop or Space Patrol Luluko or the Cyberpunk show, whatever. They're all extreme in their own ways. But here, I think, in a rare moment, they really brought everything to bear in perfect balance. Comedy, action, comfiness, grotesqueness. Don't want to spoil anything, but it does get quite visceral. And of course, deliciousness. There's so much emphasis put on the presentation of the food, the sensory experience of eating the food. and then the community and the social world that emerges from food. Most amazing is that it like Dendoden was even better than some of its parts. This was all kind of what I expected from it. This is the high hopes that I had from it. As one of my favorite manga getting adapted by one of my favorite studios, and yet I think it managed to clear that high bar. And became quite a big phenomenon. Dunmeshi was all over Twitter. All the characters have like big fandoms now. Of course, I'm kind of in a bubble in that I was like seeking out that content and enjoying it, and so it showed me more. The trough got full, but nah, I just that it existed at all. I was reading this manga when there was only like one volume out ish. So I watched it grow from a fairly niche series, kind of just enjoyed by manga heads, to something that has like a substantial fan base in the West, just for the anime, just for Senshi. It's fantastic. Bring on season 2. Adapt the whole thing, please. I think the ending of this series is phenomenal. One of my favorites in manga, and I want to see that all animated at this level of quality. But even that is not number one. And the number one spot here is, of course, Hibike Euphonium, Season 3. Yeah, I mean, it's not really a fair competition. Certain things, I think, hit you on a transcendental level, where it's not even like, well, I'm enjoying this because of X, Y, and Z, but this has reasons A, B, C that it's a little more fun, or whatever. It just becomes incomparable. It just sort of snatches your brain from a higher plane of reality and locks you in. I was in high school band. I was okay. I was a solid second chair. I did not really aspire to much more than that, but our high school band was quite good. We would win local competitions. We did not go to nationals. I don't think there is nationals in Canada. But we would go and win local competitions. And, I was doing my part, but again, not to the fullest extent of my enthusiasm. And I sing occasionally, a couple times a year, with a choir that has a lot of professional singers in it. And I am definitely in the bottom 10% skill-wise of people in that choir, but I'm doing my best. I'm not embarrassing myself. I can bring it. I can sing the piece. And it feels like with this level of participation in professional music, in try-hard music, for lack of a better term, I have always been on the edge of another world. I've always been on the tangent of a world that I can see, which is people that truly devote their lives to music. And when I first started watching the show in 2015, in roughly the same position, the choir situation was different, but whatever. This was a world that I desperately longed to be in. I think that's what made the show so all-consuming to me, was that my own life was not going great. I had a lot of mental health issues. I was a closeted, in-denial trans person that felt like transitioning was impossible. I felt that being in a loving relationship was impossible. I felt like my career was doomed. All of these things were piling up and making the current situation of my life 10 years ago just completely miserable. And when I watched Hibike and I saw, this depiction of love between people and music, love generated within music itself, that I'd stood on the edge of before, that I had caught glimpses of before and stuck my toes into before, and feeling like if only I could be in that world, if only I could truly immerse myself and live for music in this way, maybe then I could sort all my problems out. Maybe then I could just be like Kumiko, who certainly has a lot of problems and goes through a lot of drama and challenges and struggles throughout the series, but in a way that is so courageous and bold and beautiful. And I just couldn't see my own life in that way. My own life just felt like a series of pathetic failures and misses and impossible things. Whereas, Kumiko was someone I truly was rooting for, that I felt had all the potential in the world. And that all consumed me. It truly drove me insane watching the show when it first came out. I wrote a 30,000 word essay about one of the episodes that's still online somewhere. Just try to find it. But now, 10 years later, I'm like pretty much a full, complete human being now. All of those things I worried about actually did come to pass. I have a good career that I enjoy and makes good money. I'm in a loving relationship. I transitioned. I feel happy having done that. I'm living authentically and happy now. I feel just generally content on a day to day basis. Just fucking crazy. But now I am still on this periphery of this world. I'm still engaging in music just to this tangential degree. And I am visiting this world non manically, watching this show, but still sobbing at length. Despite all of that, despite my healthy separation, when I watch Hibike, when I see Kumiko, I just it's like I don't know, man. Because it's not even like, oh, that's the world of professional musicians. No, no. It's the world of anime. It doesn't exist. It's not real. It's a novel somebody wrote that then KyoAni animated. And yet it's like it feels like something in parallel has happened to me that in my success and Kumiko's success, there's some linkage that is unreal and totally I don't know. It's just such an achievement. I'm trying to like put together coherent thoughts about this, but in the seasonal anime review video, I talked about this for like a solid hour. So probably anything that I'm struggling to try to articulate, I've already said there. So just go watch that. And that's our list. We got in under 45 minutes even. What a quick, light and breezy video that is by Keats the YouTube standards. Yeah, check out some of these shows. The anime's great. More people should be watching anime. Honestly, I think that. Even with the level of cultural saturation that anime has achieved, there's so many people out there that like have ruled it out for themselves that I think would actually really enjoy a lot of these shows. Okay. See ya.